Let's play with a lens from 1992. This lens in the foreground is the EF28-105, and I'm going to call it a budget L lens. As you can see in the background, we have the EF24-105 F4L USM. Anyways, the reason I call this a mini L lens is that it is basically the same as the L lens in the background, as you can see. Well, there's obviously some trade-offs, and I'll get to explaining that. But honestly, this is possibly a secondary to this L lens. Straight off the bat, looking at them side by side, obviously, the 28-105 is obviously smaller and is lighter. Anyways, on to the specs. Something that I guess I could say is the important part is the aperture. It goes from 3.5 to 4.5. So on the short end or the wide end, it's at 3.5, and you zoom in, you go to f4 and then f4.5 on the long end, which is honestly great for a lens like this. Now, it shoots at 28 on the wide end, so the EF24-105 has a 4mm advantage. Not really an advantage, or a major advantage that is, but it's something I guess I could note. Now, a big trade-off is that this lens has no image stabilization. So if you have shaky hands or really rely on image stabilization, this is definitely not a lens for you, as on the long end, definitely it is very shaky if you don't have steady hands. I definitely have steady hands, but image stabilization definitely helps. Another thing to note is that this lens is a macro lens, meaning you could actually get up very close. This lens you could apparently get as close as half a meter. That's pretty good for a lens like this, though the EF24-105 gets as close as 45 centimeters, which is just really a 5 centimeter advantage. Once again, not really a major advantage here. Back to aperture really quickly. Of course, this lens that I'm holding right now, the 24-105, is a constant aperture lens, meaning, of course, it's an f4 lens. It's pretty much there, you can see it. It's constant f4 all the way through, whereas the lens before, the EF28-105, is f3.5-4.5. Not really a major deal breaker, honestly. f3.5-4.5 is something I definitely should have had from the beginning, but oh well. Now, of course, I should be showing some sample images. Here we have some buses and a transit vehicle, or car or whatever, just on the side of the street. As you can see, the background is decently blurred out. It's f4.5 here, as it's the long end. It's decent, not really, the best thing, but it's decent for what you're getting and the price point of this lens currently, which I will definitely get onto at the end. And of course, another sample image showing off just two buses sitting or laying over in a terminal. Not really too special. Alright, now my favorite part. I'm going to pit this lens against the EFS 18-55 and 55-250. And while I have it, and while I'm at it, I might as well throw in the L lens as well. So I have some drawings on my wall, and I tested it on those. So we're of course starting with the EF28-105 at 28mm. This is what it looks like. And this is at 105mm. Decent zoom. Next up is the EFS 18-55. Now you're actually seeing 3 characters in the frame. It's of course much wider than the 28-105, so there's that. And here it is at 55mm. Next up is the EFS 55-250. I had to back up just slightly because its close focusing range is like a meter or something. Now since we're already at 55, the long range or the long end is going to be crazy. Here it is at 250. Yeah, it's a telephoto lens for a reason. And this is honestly the only thing that beats out all 3 lenses is because it's a telephoto lens. Maybe a 70-200 is going to be my next investment. And for extra reasons, here's the L lens. Pretty much the same as the 28-105, except of course the 4mm slight advantage, I guess. But also, if you hadn't noticed, the room is kinda dark. So this lens having an f4 constant is pretty good, especially in low light situations, especially because my room lights kind of suck. But oh well, that's pretty much it. One thing I should mention is that I was using an APS-C camera, so 105 is like 168 millimeters, and 28 and 24 is like something like 35 or 40 millimeters, something around that. Anyways, the 28 to 105 is definitely that sort of one size fits all kind of lens. It could shoot macro, it could actually just shoot a wide angle, but not super wide like the 18 to 55, but it's decent enough. It could also shoot a decent telephoto, not very great like the 55 to 250, like that's insane. But yeah, if you are sort of harboring on just one lens that pretty much does most, if not all, things that you could require, then it's pretty good. Though one thing I will say is it's not super sharp. Well, it is a lens from 1992, so I'm using an 18 megapixel APS-C camera, so it's decent on that and anything lower. But honestly, I don't think it could handle anything higher than say like 20 megapixels. And nowadays you got cameras that are like 24, 32, 45, 60, like it's super high. But for a lens like this, if you're on a very tight budget or just starting off, this is definitely a lens that you could possibly look at. I got this lens for $100, so really it's a steal if anything. One last thing I should mention is it has a filter thread size of 58 millimeters, which is honestly great and is the average, honestly, compared to lenses like the 18 to 55 that I have and the 55 to 250, which also have a 58 millimeter filter thread. So pretty much you could save on having to buy different filter threads instead of, what I have, the EF 24 to 105 with its 77 millimeter thread, meaning I have to buy a bunch of new stuff. But yeah, that's one of the many advantages, and of course, this lens has its own disadvantages as listed, and potentially more. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have for this lens. It's a decent one, and yeah, that's all I have to say. See ya.